Here is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion briefing for this Friday, April 21st. Looking at recent precipitation over the past 7 days, on the left-hand side, you can see quite wet across the northern three-quarters of our geographic area. Areas in green represent a ½ inch to locally an 1.5 inches of precipitation, especially up in the central Idaho mountains and across the high Sierra. You can see drier amounts, actually no precipitation across eastern and southern areas. And percent of normal, you can see that we are below normal across maybe the southern third, and then of course we see no shading at all. It's because there was no precipitation, but otherwise wetter than normal across most northern and central areas. A look at our satellite imagery with upper-level maps superimposed. You see a ridge of high pressure building strongly across California. Northwesterly flow still brings some cool but dry air across most of the region. Bring a northerly flow down into parts of Nevada, southern Nevada. We'll have to talk about this a little bit. Further off to the west, a deep winter-like low-pressure system across the Gulf of Alaska. This system will slowly pull down some cooler and moist air for much of next week. So let's take a look and see what's going on the large scale weather-wise for this afternoon. We see a ridge of high pressure building across the west coast. Drier northwesterly flow aloft, pushing in some dry air across our region. You see deeper moisture well offshore. And looking at dispersion, where you see the areas in white, excellent dispersion. Areas in red to purple are much lower dispersion or ventilation areas. You can see just a little bit across central Nevada, but the worst of it's to our west. Otherwise, most of the area looking pretty good for today. And looking at the winds, you can see winds fairly light across most areas, a light to moderate northwesterly flow up north. We do have some concerns down south here, the northerly gradient being channeled by some of the deeper canyons through here along the Colorado River and through Lake Mead, producing some locally strong transport winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour. Mixing heights overall looking pretty good in most areas where you see those yellow to orange shades. And then looking at Saturday, that ridge of high pressure that was along the west coast now shifts across the Great Basin, bringing drier air, especially across southern areas. No significant moisture through our region. Despite high pressure, we still have pretty good dispersion improving across Nevada, getting a little worse across portions of Utah and parts of western Wyoming. Pretty good in most areas of Idaho as well. And on Saturday, winds die down across our southern areas. They start picking up to the north, coming down out of the Snake River Valley areas. Here's our dispersion overall, our mixing heights. Overall, not too bad in most areas. And looking for Sunday, we see that another low pressure system is now starting to move in with moisture across our northern areas. Deeper moisture with a stronger low just off the Pacific Northwest coast. And as it goes with approaching storm systems, overall dispersion typically pretty good. Wind-wise, transport winds on the left-hand side picking up quite strongly out of the southwest with speeds of 35 to 45 miles per hour. Excellent dispersion just about all areas. And looking locally at the Utah Clearing Index produced by the National Weather Service in Salt Lake City, you can see that the orange and red are good dispersion conditions, which are in existence today. They take a downturn across many areas on Saturday before significantly improving by Sunday. And looking at precipitation over the next 3 days, from Friday morning through Monday morning, a little bit up in the central Idaho mountains, maybe a quarter to a ½ inch, maybe a locally heavier pocket, otherwise quite dry across most areas. With a northerly gradient getting enhanced by terrain, you can see that we have strong winds across southern Nevada, across the Colorado River Valley, and through the deeper canyons through Lake Mead. Darker greens are anywhere from 18 to 22 miles per hour. These oranges and purple shades you see through here are wind speeds sustained somewhere between 25 and 35 miles per hour. In addition to that, that will also produce downsloping and dry humidity. These humidity levels are down to anywhere from about 10 to 15% in these areas. So with those winds and those low humidities, we do have a concern in some of these southern areas where fuels, especially lighter fuels, are fairly dry. So here are our concerns for today. With a combination of strong northerly winds and resulting low humidity, we do have a red flag warning in effect for much of today across the Lake Mead area, continuing down across the Colorado River Canyon area. Basically, lighter fuels in this area will be susceptible to strong gusty northerly winds as well as low humidity down into the teens, maybe even single digits throughout the day today. And then looking down the road for next week, starting with Monday, April 24th, you can see we're in a strong upper-level jet stream with lots of moisture in this dark green. This looks more like a February map than it does the end of April, but light to moderate precipitation, maybe locally heavy up north, with this kind of stormy pattern dispersion on the right-hand side remains typically good. And then going through Tuesday, you can see not much change, quite wet, quite stormy across all areas. That results in excellent dispersion, but fuels may be too wet for large-scale broadcast burning. And a little break in the system across northwestern areas, still wet across most of our central and southern areas. Dispersion overall good, and little change on Thursday, except that looks like a stationary upper level low pressure system may be forming, and this could keep our northern and central areas quite cloudy and wet with periods of precipitation as well. And under low pressure, of course, excellent dispersion. So overall good dispersion next week, but quite wet. Our precipitation next Monday to Wednesday, you can see that the northern two-thirds of our GAC remain quite wet with moderate to locally heavy precipitation amounts, but still bone dry across southern Nevada and far southern Utah and the Arizona Strip. If we total up precipitation over the next 7 days, you can see how quite wet it is. These darker blues and purples indicating anywhere from an inch to as much as 2 inches of precipitation. The darker greens about a quarter to a half inch. But again, you see the areas that are dry, especially those areas that will be exposed to some wind and drying later today. Let's take a look at our long-range 8 to 14-day outlook. This takes us through the end of April into the first week of May. Cooler than normal across much of our area. Also wetter than normal for at least the eastern half of our geographic area, but a strong drier than normal signal across a good chunk of Nevada. This concludes our smoke briefing. Our next briefing will be coming up next Monday. Have a great day.